Hi, it's Sarah from Crafty Creatures here with our Christmas kitten painting. We're going to need a canvas, some paintbrushes and a pencil, some paints, and something to wash our brushes in. So to start, we're going to have our canvas portrait, taller than wide, and we're going to make a nice circle kind of near the middle of the bottom corner here. We're going to give it a little neck. We can make some little lines to help place our eyes. We're just going to give it a pair of nice round eyes with a kind of flat bottom, kind of like half a teardrop shape. We'll add in some smaller circles for the eyes. Again, we want these to be nice and big. And of course, we'll need a nice pair of triangular ears with a little inside triangle and a little triangular nose. We're going to add a nice bow and ribbon to the neck here with some nice blocky shapes. These don't have to be perfect because they are ribbons, they'll be a little bit wonky. And we'll add in our inner ears for our cat. Now if we press nice and light, we can erase any lines we don't want. And we can also change up our lines a little bit to make our shape a bit nicer. I'm just going to go in and I'm going to erase some of those extra lines because I don't need them anymore. Now we can use a circle tracer or some cups and some bowls, and we're going to make 3 circles. We're going to make one bigger one kind of above the cat and 2 smaller ones. We're going to have the top one here kind of coming off that top left corner. And in that big one we're going to add a little oval with a little oval coming down to make the little top of the Christmas bauble, and same with that little one. And I'm just adding in some lines here just to kind of show where I'm going to put my tree branches. And now it's time to paint. We're going to start with the cat. We're going to mix a nice big amount of white with a little bit of blue and a bit of black. We're going to make a nice gray cat. And we're going to add in little bits of black at a time till we get a shade of gray we're happy with. We don't want it to be too dark, but we don't want it to be too light either. Then we're going to start filling in the cat. If we go over the outside edges, it's not a big deal, but we do want to be careful around our eyes and our bow. I like to use my little brush to mix, and then I'll use however much paint is on my little brush till it runs out, and then I'll switch to my bigger brush. Now we want these to be nice and smooth, so we're going to smooth a lot of those globs of paint out as we're going. That way it'll dry nice for us. Next we're going to start painting in the ornaments. So we're going to paint this top one and the bottom one. We're going to paint them in with orange. And again, we want these to be nice and smooth. Try to stay within the lines the best you can. If you go over the edges, it's not a big deal. We're going to do a dark background, but it's good practice. Then we're going to paint in the larger one with red. And again, let's try to be careful around those edges. And we're going to do a nice red bow on this kitten. We're doing a lot of nice Christmassy colors. Notice how I'm smoothing my paint out as I'm going. This means we won't have any big globs of paint, and it'll dry a lot smoother for us. So we can go ahead and fill in all of the bow with the red. Don't forget the little ends. And we can fill in our eyes. We can't go over that little circle because we're going to fill that in with black. And again, just be nice and smooth. And now that we're done here, we're going to fill in this last Christmas ornament. Again, we're going to use orange. If we go over our little hanger of our ornament, it's okay because we're going to fill that in with black. We just want to be nice and smooth with our paint. Next, we're going to make a darker gray, so we're going to mix in a little bit more black at a time till we get a gray that's a bit darker than our cat. We can test it on our canvas. I kind of tested mine a few times till I got the shade I wanted. And we're going to fill in that nice little inner triangle of both of our ears. We're also going to do a little bit of shading. So we're going to add a nice blocky line kind of underneath the head here kind of where the bow overlaps the head. And we're also going to do the same on the body underneath the bow. We want to do this with our little paintbrush so we have lots of control. And once we have that all in, we can wash our paintbrush, get it kind of damp, not too soggy, and then we'll just kind of blend the edges of our shadows here into the rest of our gray. So it'll just make it look a bit smoother. Now we're going to start mixing in some black and some orange and a little bit of white into a lot of brown. This is going to get us a nice dark chocolatey color. And we're going to fill in all of our background with this. So I like to use my smaller paintbrush in smaller areas around the edges, and then I fill in with my bigger paintbrush. Again, we want to be nice and smooth, so we're smoothing out the paint as we go. We don't want any big globs because it'll show up when it dries. Be very careful around the ornaments. So we want a nice smooth line. But I made a little mistake here, but that's okay. If we make little mistakes like this, I'm just going to put a tree branch here, and then you won't even be able to see it. So we're going to let that background dry, and we can either just walk away from our painting for a little bit, or we can add a second coat to some of our colors. So as my gray cat has dried, I've noticed it's a little patchy, so I'm going to mix a little bit more of my gray here, and I'm going to layer another layer on top of my paints. So it ended up being slightly darker, but it just helps make my painting look smoother. So I'm going to do that to all of my colors except my background. So I'm going to do that to the orange of the eyes, and I'm going to do that to the red of the baubles and the other orange ornaments, as well as the bow. Even going to go over my darker gray a little bit too, just to help clean it up. Doing two coats just makes things look a whole lot smoother and a whole lot brighter. Just be very careful when you're doing your second coat. It's very easy to kind of go over an edge or a line. If that happens, just try to even it out so it looks natural. So while I'm going over all of my colors, I'm going to add in some of that darker gray to that kind of top circle of my hanger. This will just help make my hanger parts of my ornaments look a little bit more 3D. Because then I'm going to paint the rest of that hanger part in with black. Now unfortunately we lost a little bit of footage here, so I'm kind of going back and I'm showing you what I did here. So we're going to add some shading to the orange baubles by mixing in a little bit of red to some orange, just little bits at a time, and it's very strong. We're adding almost like a 3/4 of an inner circle here, just like a nice little U shape along the bottom of my ornaments. I'm giving them a little gap from the edge. Then I'm taking some fresh orange and I'm kind of brushing over the edge where it meets the middle, and that's going to help fill it all in. And then for the red ornament, I'm going to add a little bit of blue and a tiny bit of brown to some red. That'll make a dark red for me. And again, I'm doing that kind of U shape on my red bauble. And I'm going to add some shading and some lines to my bow, just kind of where they overlap or where the wrinkles are. And I'm going to blend it with some fresh red. This will just help make it look a little bit more smooth and a little bit more finished. And we can add some nice chunky white highlights to our baubles. This will help make them look really shiny. And we can even add some to our bows. This is a nice satiny bow, very shiny, very pretty. And we're also going to fill in that center part of our eyes with black and that little bit of our hanger with black as well. Just be very careful and use a small brush and take your time. You can also mix a little bit of pink, so a little bit of white and red to make a little pink nose. And then we're going to start on the branches. We're going to mix blue, green, and white together till we get a nice minty green. And for magic trick, we're going to add a tiny bit of red. That'll just make our green a little bit more natural. It's going to tone it down a little bit so it's a little bit less bright. Now I'm doing this while a lot of my paint is still very wet. You can do it right away, or you can leave your painting to dry a little bit. We're just going to make some lines, and then we're going to start making some short feathery motions with our paintbrushes and our green paint. We're going to be nice and thick with the green paint. Because my paint underneath is still quite wet, it's kind of showing up through, so I'm making a little bit more and I'm being very thick. And I'm kind of starting from that line and I'm going out on an angle. This will help create that nice pine needle shape. You can turn your canvases around so you can reach those top branches a little bit easier. I also overlapped some branch on that little mistake I made on my orange ornament. That way it kind of covers up that dark brown spot. Now we're going to make a lighter green, so we're going to add in a lot more white. And we're going to use that little brush and we're going to brush in some lighter green. Because my paint is still quite wet, my camera's not quite picking up that green, but we can see it a little bit more in these branches. We can also make a darker green, so we can add in more blue and a little bit more brown. We can add in some darker green as well. This will help to really thicken out our branches, make them look nice and real. And because our green is still very wet, it's all going to kind of blend. We're going to have some fun color mixings happening here. I extended my one branch out a little bit just so it covers up part of that top of that hanger, so that it looks like my little orange ornament down there is kind of hanging from it. You can go back and forth several times with your lighter and darker green till you're really happy with those pine branches. Now for a little bonus step, we can use the wrong end of our little brush to add 2 or 3 little dots of white to our eyes. This will make our eyes look nice and shiny. That kitten's looking up to all those Christmas lights. And that's our painting. Good job, everybody. I'll see you next time with a new painting. Bye-bye.